DNVR Draft Pod. That's right. Man, football's around the corner.
Today is a fall day, like a fall preview in Denver.
Yeah.
It's like 75, a little
That's
rainy. Right. It could have been a hoodie day, but I'm going to save my first hoodie day of the season for when it's rightfully time.
A little football preview weather-wise for you. Not from the Toyota Lounge, but always Toyota on our minds. Join in on the Toyota chat. We've got David Freeze in there. Give us a thumbs up. And yeah, all of a sudden, we've done all these position previews throughout the offseason.
Yep.
We have the two supposedly worse, usually tight end safeties, not the most exhilarating to talk about necessarily. This year, they kind of are. Mm-hmm. And they're two very important positions for the Broncos who, as David Freeze in the Toyota chat says, he thought they had the Simmons replacement in Stearns. Lots of things happening. I don't know what the Broncos are going to do at safety. Mm-hmm. It's my biggest question mark in how will the defense replicate their success, from the second half of the season and beyond without Justin Simmons, who really feels like the biggest difference. Well, the safety group is really going to be tested. And we shall see. Also, Broncos GM George Payton loves himself a good DB in the draft.
Yes, he does.
He can't get enough. And would you believe it? We have a ton of options. And then it's a tight end class, which tight ends are an every other year position.
Yeah, they're kind of weird. This one's loaded.
2 years ago, we had a super duper class. This year, it was like Brock Bowers and everyone else.
Right.
And this tight end class looks quite intriguing from many of the usual suspects. If you're a draft guy and you haven't really got into this year's class yet, just take a guess. What may be the programs that churn out some good tight ends? You might guess Michigan. You might guess Notre Dame. You might guess Georgia, which has absolutely dominated the position. And you always would guess Iowa.
Yes, sir.
And you would be correct in all counts. We also had some guys stay in school who I could have sworn had declared. So, I mean, maybe that's where we start, is if you're a longtime listener of this show.
Yeah.
I don't even take a sip when I mention Brancusi is not even appropriate. It's like, take out a reverse mortgage. Like, we mention him every 4 years. He's somehow still with the Utah Utes. This was one of the great freshman wide receiving tight ends you have ever seen. And yeah, injuries once again are what has them coming back. The Broncos got themselves another Utah tight end who was out last season for injuries. So yeah, Kuthi in the conference you cover in the Big 12. Never did introduce you. You're Jake Schwanitz. I'm Andre Simone.
Thank you.
You hear Vasquez behind the sticks. David knows. David Freeze. Are you just known as Yaya in the podcasting world? Yeah, here's not even a thing. That's great. I know Allie texted me, "Hey Andre," back to a text. I was like, "Is this my mom
Who's Andre?
texting me?" Like,
are you mad at me? Did I do something?
Like, huh. Usually I get a Dre. I swear that would have been easier for you to text too. So Kuthi's still in the mix. I definitely had studied up on Bryson Nesbitt, the North Carolina tight end, who definitely popped when you watch Drake May tape last year. He's coming back and will be intriguing. He's had 1,092 receiving yards over the last 2 years. So we've got some of these guys like that. And then, since David mentions in the Toyota chat, Iowa, the Iowa kid, everyone kind of expected him to declare, but Luke Lachey is coming back. And will he be next in line? Such a classic Iowa tight end.
Yeah. It's stacked, man. I think that there's a legitimate like 4 or 5-way competition for like first tight end drafted. Colston's probably the favorite right now, Colston Loveland,
who we've talked about in our All-American team previews and stuff like that. The Michigan tight end. He rocks that 18. You'll see him on our thumbnail. I think that'll get people to click and be like, wait, who's this like jacked up white wide receiver? No, he's a Michigan tight end.
Yes.
And I think was really just scratching the surface last year.
Yeah, the thing is, though, I just don't think Michigan's going to be as good offensively this year with whoever they decide to run with that quarterback.
Right, and if they weren't very pass-heavy last year,
yes,
that year has to be less pass-heavy this year with a first-time starter at quarterback and a run game and O-line that they will always lead into.
But he plays tight end. Tight end is the safety valve, and he was kind of like that for J.J. McCarthy. We've talked a lot about Colston so far this summer, but again, he's like a legit receiver. Like he is wide open strides in the open field, like speed, big catches, long, like away from his body, like the extension, all that stuff.
Yeah, no, he's something else. He's everyone's top tight end, and it's because his upside is really noteworthy. Now, Michigan tight end, you'd assume he's a very good run blocker. He's He's
average to slightly plus.
Yeah, but so he's skewing more as your typical receiving tight end more than anything.
Yes,
mismatch threat.
Yes,
that kind of guy. And the other guy that fits that profile is Georgia's Oscar Delp.
Your guy,
my guy, who like Colston Loveland, is just like absurd size, 6'5", 245 pounds. He's one of 12 FBS tight ends to get clocked at 20 plus miles per hour.
Mm-hmm.
He is just a mismatch threat. I think he will fill in right away in that Brock Bowers role, which will be really intriguing. And then Georgia has Stanford transfer Benjamin Urasek.
Yep.
Did I say that right?
I say Urosek. I don't know how it's actually said.
Yes. But he didn't want to go too far east in the ACC, so he settles in the SEC. Sorry, I was reading the comment. David Freeze really bringing it today.
Urosek is legit. This guy was a monster at Stanford. He didn't do too much last year. Only played in 6 games.
Yeah.
I was trying to look. It says shoulder injury last year.
Yeah,
so
disappointing year. But what he did at Stanford was noteworthy.
I mean, he was like the next Stanford tight end over the last few years, and then he had the injury last year. I mean, again, man, he's just legit. He's complete. He's a Stanford tight end, and now he's going to Georgia. And he doesn't have to be like the Brock Bowers role. You know what I mean? Like you got Delp for that. So now Georgia's back to having like a formidable 2 tight end set. And we're going to see a lot of running the football from them with that.
Yeah, they returned their starting left tackle. The running backs are always good. They always find wide receivers. Carson Beck is back.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be very intriguing. I think it's easy to talk. Like from our position previews, I feel like we've been a little light on the Bulldogs, and they actually get a little heavily featured because they've got some great safeties as well. But yeah, those 2 at Georgia, you'll want to pay attention to them. And that's going to be a really intriguing competition because, I mean, who's going to get more touches? Like, is it going to be a true tight end, 2 tight end look? Is Delp going to be almost a de facto wide receiver? Is Urosek complete enough? So, I mean, it's not like a Darnell Washington type role as a true blocking tight end.
Right, and he doesn't have that size. But I do think, kind of like that situation, if I remember correctly, they played Bowers a lot out of the slot that year. And they played Washington tight. So, I mean, Delp is massive. So I don't want to like just automatically say that he's going in the slot.
Exactly.
So maybe Yarosik actually sees some more slot time and gets more playing time as a wide receiver this year. He had 43, 49, and 16 catches at Stanford, so we know he can do it. But now it would be in a premier offense where he's not the number one target.
Yep, and he's having to compete against other tippy-top guys. That's kind of the biggest names. Caden Prescorn.
Oh, this guy's a beast.
Memphis transfer, another guy who got a bag from Mississippi, Ole Miss. And yeah, he's a beast. Tell us about him.
Yeah, I've just been playing a lot with him in CFB 25, so I know. But yeah, man, this guy is kind of like Colston, where like he's just a big-bodied wide receiver almost. He's a legitimate weapon on the outside. Right here, since 2022, 1,051 receiving yards and 527 yards after the catch are each fourth among FBS tight ends.
We've got some weapons in
Yes.
this class, Jake.
Yes.
Weapons. Guys who Sean Payton would know how to use. That would be very excited. I mean, as David Freeze in the Toyota chat mentions, could it be Lucas Kroll's year? Who knows?
Lucas Kroll, is that the...
It's one of their tight ends who's been in the mix.
I mean, of course they're going to be in the mix.
Yeah. No, it's a wide open competition.
Yeah, no, and we're really deep at this position this year.
Yeah, but you don't have any like... I mean, Dulcich, I think, has some blue chip type upside. I once thought Troutman was almost at that level. Hasn't quite happened. I know some people are high on Kroll with the little flashes that we've seen thus far.
We liked Dulcich a lot when he was coming out a few years ago. We liked the athleticism, the ability out of the slot. I mean, stretching the field with him. You saw it in that the first game he started. What was it, like a Thursday night against the Chargers or something? And he took the like an 80-yard like wheel route or something to the house.
I mean, his rookie stats are very impressive.
Yeah, I mean,
and just that UCLA in that offense, he was really good. He was a two tight end set, and he had to shine in spite of that, and he did.
Tight end, though, is another position that I look at on the Broncos roster, and I'm just like, we could do better.
Yep, 100%. And the Buffs, who you're covering, are in a similar position where we got a C. So safety, you might have a few names to throw out there. Tight end, it's more of a wait and see type deal.
Yeah, I mean, they have a guy, but he hasn't played much, so yeah, we'll see. Sam Hart,
an Ohio State transfer, so he is and Colorado kid, fun one to look at. Amari Neblack, last name I'd throw out there. Alabama transfer, went to Texas. Texas's offense, they've showed some
him in
real
Alabama.
upside. Yep. Obviously under Sark, and you gotta see. I mean, we'll get into some natty odds later on in the show. Is this the year? And in the SEC, who knows? Everything could happen. They've got very short odds to win it all. If they do, though, Neblack, I think, will be a big part of this.
Yeah. Didn't they just have their running back just went down, Texas, I think, yesterday with a season-ending injury.
Every year they have so many guys, and someone's always getting injured. Crazy.
So, and it was last year when that happened too, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Brooks, right, got hurt?
Yeah. Yeah, that was more like week 10, but yes.
So it was later in the year, so it was kind of the Quinn Ewers show after that point. And look, Texas is Texas. They're going to have another back that they plug in just like last year, but I expect a lot of it to fall on Quinn Ewers. So Neblack's going to get his chances this year.
Yeah, and he's a perfect plug-and-play replacement for Jatavion Sanders, kind of a smaller receiving tight end. And yeah, that makes a very intriguing fit in that offense. Just no doubt. And they have Isaiah Bond there too, who also transferred from Alabama. So speed-wise, they will be completely set. That offense has a lot of upside. As does the defense. They've got studs on the O-line. I really don't know, man. I feel like such a sucker buying into Texas being a real SEC contender.
Come on, man.
Maybe I'm a sharp. I just don't know.
We'll get into it fully with natty odds, I guess. But look at what Sark has done. They were in the playoff last year. They damn near made the national title game last year. Yeah,
undefeated. And not Carson Beck. Quinn Ewers was injured for part of that.
Yes.
Like they had to scrape by with a backup quarterback and still made it happen.
Yes, so it's they return a lot of that talent, and they got better at wide receiver with Bond. Defensively, I think you could look at their defensive line and go, oh, maybe they lost some guys, but
Yeah, right. The defensive tackle rotation, that's not the easiest to replace, but they've got some guys.
and that's the I guess the whole point I'm trying to make is Texas low key has kind of been back a few years now in terms of just overall recruiting and just the brand at this point is I kind of think back to where it should be, and they're going to be a formidable playoff contender and an SEC contender in my opinion.
I like it. Can't disagree. And I cannot disagree. Boy, I'm really hungry. These Thursday shows, they're a little earlier. I don't come pre-fed to
Tell
the
me
office
about it.
as I should. And some Raising Cane's sounds just
this is cruel right now.
Fantastic. Perfect right now. We don't have one close to the bar. I'd like order it on our phones right now.
Raising Cane's, you and Circle K can vie for the spot across the street from the DNVR bar. We need someone to
fill that void.
Yes.
We really do. We really do. The stupid noon call I'll be on, I might have to do that while I'm ordering food. Raising Cane's, the most delicious chicken fingers. They're always cooked to order and made just for you. Nice, tender, crispy. You've got the crinkle cut fries. You've got the buttery Texas toast. And, of course, the slaw. Everyone loves the slaw. And you top it all off with the Cane's sauce. Find your local Raising Cane's location or order on mobile or online for cooked-to-order, hand-breaded chicken fingers. Race into Raising Cane's. Turbocharge your chicken fingers and get them even faster by ordering online, RaisingCanes.com, or through their mobile app. Raising Cane's chicken fingers, one love, baby. And of course, Bet365. We'll be talking about odds at Bet365 very, very soon because they've got you covered. Natty ads, you want rookie awards. We've been using them as kind of our guide for any of the conference previews. They always have you covered. Olympics, I've been betting a ton of Olympics. PID's going on right now. I mean, you name it. Bet365 has you covered. As if that wasn't enough. Only place where you can find DNVR custom bets. Only place where you can use our code DNVR365 and boom, sign up. Takes 2 seconds. Official info because this isn't some rinky-dink app. We're doing it real deal Holyfield here. And then you make a minimum deposit. You make a $5 bet. As soon as that $5 bet is settled, win, lose, or draw, $150 in bonus bets for you to play with. It's a beautiful thing. Or they'll, first bet safety net offer by placing up to $1,000 if you qualify. Bet loses, you receive a match refund and bonus bets. Either way, you're a winner. We're all winners at Bet365. It's never ordinary. They've got us covered on all fronts. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay, Jakester. Safeties. Safeties is funny because I started the tight end group by talking about guys who it feels like we've been talking about for a bazillion years, and we actually have because these guys are like 25-year seniors and have been in college football forever. Or you're just like Drake May's tight end, and it feels like, oh yeah, I've been watching tape of you since Drake May was a freshman, and that feels like a while ago now, right? The safeties are different. They have been high caliber names in our world for a while now, but it's because they've just been starting from day one, and they've looked like future pros from day one. And that really helps. So, like, start with Malaki Stark, one of the stars of the Georgia defense. Yeah, as a true freshman in 22, Starks led all Georgia defenders with 847 steps. Do you guys remember that defense in 22? I mean, one of the greatest defenses ever. And, he had 8 interceptions, and he's just really good in coverage. He's gotten better on defense. I think he's kind of become a forgotten man in some ways, but this is a guy with some real pedigree, some real super high-end experience who's received excellent coaching. And yeah, he's been a name brand in our world for 3 years now.
Yep.
And his coverage ability is very intriguing. And I mean, depending on how the NFL values the position anymore, I could totally see this guy be a top 20 pick in next year's draft.
I mean,
we also don't pay safeties anymore in the NFL,
Well,
so
yeah.
I'm not quite sure. But if there ever was a guy, it's a guy with this kind of reliability. You know, a lot of times with safety, I think stuff gets lost. People talk themselves into Jamal Adams and this, that, or the other flashy guy. And we've always talked about on this pod, when you're looking for a safety, your mind needs to be last line of defense. Who can I trust as my last line of defense? Malaki Stark does that and beyond.
It's it's that, and it's a combination of production on the football. That's what I look for specifically when it comes to safeties, and that's what translates the most. Last year, 7 passes defense, 3 interceptions for Malaki Starks. Honestly, maybe a little low, but just good enough. I mean, the talent's so apparent because he was just a true freshman starter on that 2022 defense. Like, that's pretty impossible for most freshmen to do.
100%.
He went out and did it. He's actually had very consistent production, though. 68 tackles, 22, 52 tackles last year, and then 2 interceptions and 7 passes defense in 22 as well. So maybe a slight uptick in that production on the football, and he solidifies himself as a first rounder, but he's in the conversation right now for sure.
Well, and of course, you know, that production's so good as a freshman. Well, it's the 2022 Georgia defense. There,
right?
When you have so many points of strength, you're trying to find what are the points we can pick on. People tried to pick on him, and they found out. And now they're not going to, you know, now you go away from him. He's one of the strengths of that defense. So you gotta, you know, at your own peril. That's exactly right. So yeah, he is a marquee name and one of the big dogs in this class for sure. And Xavier Nwankpa from Iowa would be another one who's kind of been a household name for a minute. His fame is that he's this like highly graded freshman All-American kid who comes to Iowa, and they didn't quite let him play his first year. And slowly but surely was one of those guys to break through and get early playing time. And then in 22, he starts to up his accolades. And 23, he had for PFF, he had a very high grade, posting an 88.4, which obviously isn't always the biggest, but when you can't always grind that all 22, it's a nice little data point to have. He's just super athletic and, again, super high pedigree, and a guy with a ton of talent who I think could be a top 50 pick and has really just scratched the surface.
Yeah, he's a big time riser candidate.
Yes.
You mentioned the coverage grade, and he's flashed some plays in coverage, notably just on the ball production. But only 1 interception, 2 passes defense last year. You got to see that go up. But active in tackling, had some TFLs and a sack as well. And Iowa DBs, kind of not like the factory like tight ends or offensive tackles from Iowa, but pretty damn good.
Yeah, no, for sure. Those guys are coached up, and he's going to be in a much different Big Ten.
Yeah,
he will not get to compete against the Big Ten West anymore. You know.
Yeah. What is there? Do they have like Oregon and USC?
Dude, look that up. Yeah, it might really be wide open. And then another kind of household name is Rod Moore, the Michigan safety, and he was out last year, right?
It's this year. He tore his ACL.
Ah, shit. So he's probably coming. I mean, he was a name to look for, but
he's a dog. I mean, that secondary, you know, look, Michigan is really good defensively for a lot of reasons. But the secondary is a major reason why, you know, him and Will Johnson were like 2 of the best defensive backs in the country last year. So losing him is definitely going to hurt. I do think that he's a name, though, that we're going to kind of forget about him, obviously, because he's not going to play. And then, come February, March, you're going to start to hear about, NFL executives are really talking about Rod Moore, this guy who played on the 2023 national title team. He was just awesome, man. He makes plays all over the field. I'll pull up his stats here.
Super consistent. That's a big blow because they are, Will Johnson's so good. Him and Rod Moore really make a formidable secondary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then he was another guy where you would have liked to see, I think, a little bit more production on the ball last year. 3 passes defense, 2 interceptions, though, and had 4 interceptions the year before. So actually, the way I weigh interceptions over passes defense, I mean, it's not bad. But, yeah, this is, someone's probably going to get a steal in Rod Moore in like the 2nd or 3rd round, maybe even later this last year. So, yeah, it's a bummer that he won't be able to see the field, but that's a name that we will talk about. We will preview, I'm sure, as we get into draft previews after the season.
Yeah, see, David, we that's a lot of these guys we thought was coming out last year. Then he doesn't, and poor guy bust his ACL, which is a total bummer. I'm gonna get to Brett's question on the next segment because that cracks me up. And then, would you believe it? Xavier Watts, the Notre Dame safety, he actually won the Bronco Nagurski Award last year.
Yeah.
And he's coming back for his senior year. He didn't allow a touchdown in coverage, and he led the FBS with 7 interceptions. Can we even count them as the FBS? Doesn't sound right.
Join a conference. Stop being
join
cowards.
a conference if you want to be FBS.
Yeah. You're independent. You should have an IND next to your name at all times.
Bull subdivision. I guess they get the invite, but
7 interceptions last year. That's what I'm talking about at the safety position right there.
Including getting Caleb Williams in that Notre Dame game. So he's got some stuff. Those are really the headliners for me. Sonny Styles, at Ohio State is a big name.
He was a massive recruit.
Yeah. Keon Saab from Alabama. He's kind of the lesser of the 2 safeties because they have the who's the sophomore that was Downs?
Yes,
transfer.
He's at Ohio State now, though. They do have Malaki Moore still, though. Right. He played as a true freshman in 2020. Just okay seasons, I guess, since then. 5 passes defense, 1 interception last year, 52 tackles. Did have 5 TFLs, though. So very active around the box. He's experienced, played a lot of football, played in almost 50 games, basically. If Alabama makes the playoff, he's going to have 50 games played in his career. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, he's I guess you can still slap the Saban tag on him, and you know how Saban feels about his safeties. So just another name to watch.
1000%. Yeah, and then Rod Moore famously called game against Ohio State with an interception.
Yes, sir, he did.
So, I mean, you've got some big-time guys at some big-time programs, and the upside of everyone but Moore is top 50 pick worthy.
Yes. And then if we're going to go deep enough, I do think we have to mention Shiloh Sanders as well.
That's right.
He last year had the best season of his collegiate career, coming up from Jackson State. But this guy was recruited to South Carolina. He played in the SEC his first few years in college. A big emphasis for him this year is playing middle of the field. And kind of what I've been talking about. Right? Yes, attacking the football. He wants more production on the football. He knows exactly what he needs to enter, this upper echelon of the safety conversation.
I'd love to see him as more of a big nickel from time to time.
They're moving the secondary around a lot this year. I don't know if we'll get Shiloh in the nickel as much, just because you have Travis and some just A-plus corners. But Shiloh's going to get his opportunities in single high coverage to make some plays on the football and prove that he's an all-around safety and an NFL caliber safety. He is an NFL caliber safety for what it's worth.
Totally. And for those who don't know, new defensive coordinator coming from the Bengals, where they have used more 5 DB sets, more of that big nickel, really relied on that nickel defender a lot as kind of a versatile chess piece. So I'm very intrigued to see how Shiloh fits into that. Thinking about Brett's comment that we will bring up after I talk to you about Toyota. You know the deal. Toyota, man. Times like these where you get a little thunderstorm, reschedule some meetings as I have, maybe take a few as you're getting lunch out and about. Maybe just go and drive up to the mountains while you take a few calls. That sounds nice. And a Toyota truck. Our guy, Spence, Big Drive Spence, just got himself a new Toyota truck. They are so great. They offer 17 models available, all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, like the Epic 4Runner. And, you know, they also offer a bunch of low and zero emission vehicles combined. That's more than just about any automaker. There are 16 different hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra, iForce Max hybrid truck. Toyota SUVs are the shit. Toyota trucks are amazing. And I mean, our own Adam Mars will tell you a story himself. They are so safe. You want to be your family man like I am, Jake. You're like my son.
Yeah.
When I drive Jake around, I want to be in a Toyota. Keep my kids safe, you know. So visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. Auto Nation Toyota, Arapahoe, and Centennial. Corwin Toyota in Boulder. I've once called that Crowin, which would be
I'm not surprised you called it that.
Littleton, thanks, son. Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West, you guessed it, in Lakewood. Toyota, an official partner, CU Athletics, automotive partner of the NFL, and you know it, baby, the official vehicle of DNVR. And anytime's a great time to take your Toyota and drive yourself to the DNVR bar, where it's always popping, but never more than the fall. Never more than the fall, where it's like, pick your poison. We're talking football here, so I'd remind you, it's tailgate season. That means thednvr.com/events. You'll see all our tailgates. Buffs just announced our new lot and doing some insane game ticket giveaways that are connected to that. Broncos, we miss tailgating so much. We're doing one for the preseason at just an absurd $10 ticket. And then the homies are hooking it up with some brewskis, some food. Come to the DNVR tickets, tailgate, get some Pete's. Are you kidding me? A Breck brews in your belly? What a time to be alive. Like you said, it feels like fall already.
Yeah.
It's going to really feel like fall when you get your ass over to a nice DNVR tailgate. Would you believe it?
Plus, you get to meet Dre.
You do. Avalanche Takeover is being announced. And yeah, I think there's still a couple spots in the DNVR Kickoff Classic, our fall-inspired, football-inspired golf tournament that pops off August 16th. It's a 4-man format. And yeah, I've been out to these. Always a blast. And then Rocky's Takeover coming up on Todd Helton night, getting all the homies, having some brewskis on the bus over at Coors, not worrying about parking. And then there's all sorts of fun stuff. Tickets in section 205. That's another incredible deal. Again, guys, most of our events, we're not trying to make money. We're trying to give our fans, our diehards, all the sicko mode geniuses out there like you, a fun place to be at and be with other diehards and give you a good deal. So check that out because there really is some great stuff. Okay, bring up Brett Bozier's comment in the Toyota chat because it's really true. And I'm glad Brett finally says it because I've thought this for a bazillion years. But no one's really called me out on it. But yeah, I have to keep a pitch count on how many times I say intriguing or intrigued. I do it on the draft pod like crazy, but I'll use it in everyday life. Like Zach Stevens pitched me on a travel plan for Broncos, and I was like, I'm intrigued by it. You know, I say it left and right. I'm saying it to my wife. I'm saying it to my kids. It's nuts. I see upside everywhere.
So yes,
everyone's like a stacked receiving tight end from Michigan for me, you know?
I mean, you kind of just took the words out of my mouth there. Intrigued is a big like draft term.
Yeah.
So this just solidifies yourself as a draft nut and a football guy using intrigued. Stuff like, I don't know, hip flexibility in your everyday movement.
That's right.
I don't know. There's a bunch of other ones, but you're up there with intrigue, definitely.
Yeah, no, I really get it out. And then, I mean, as some have pointed out, then I lean into all sorts of double innuendos that I just ignore. And so, yeah, I love how I talk on this podcast. And I love that people like Brett are finally starting to catch on and calling me out for it. So that's good. And look at David Freeze telling us that he's coming out for the Carolina
Let's go,
game
David.
like a legend. That's going to be an all-timer. We want to see you at the Mecca, David. And then tailgating it up. That's going to be a blast. Was that really all our position previews? I think so.
I think we did the damn thing, bro.
Crazy. We did running backs? Yeah, we did running
We
backs.
definitely did running backs.
Yeah, no, we've done them all.
Remember that?
We've done them all.
We
August
talked
8th,
quarterbacks
look
a
at us.
lot in the summer, early in the summer. Of course, with Shador and everything.
Yep.
Yeah, we've hit everything.
So you guys have till the rest of the month to catch up on any of those, and then it gets to our week-by-week breakdowns, previewing the best head-to-head matchups. Oh, it's going to be a blast.
When we're on this show and like segment 2 or 3 is just like 10 games listed out that we just talked through.
It's so great.
Oh, my God.
It's really like we get to live our best lives on a Saturday and then relive living our best lives on a Saturday on Thursdays. We'll keep this up. We'll do this on Thursdays. We don't care. That's great. So we've also done all our conference previews. You guys did a little G5 action while I was in Italy, and we talked about all of the Power 4. So yeah, and I think we've given out some playoff predictions as well. It's natty time though.
Yeah.
I think this is the hardest conversation of all, as who wins it all in college football.
Right.
This feels like such a wide open race. It's a Power 5. It's no longer a Power 4. It's a 12-team playoff. Yep. Power 4, not Power 5. I get it. It's a 12-team playoff, which really broadens the field. I mean, anything can happen in one single game elimination at the end of the season. We've also never seen college kids go this late into the season and play this much.
16 games if you're making it to the Natty.
We don't really have a track record of how's that wear and tear, how unpredictable does this become, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I also think it's a lot of the premier quarterbacks have moved on. It's, you know, you don't have, I guess you do have some intriguing returning quarterbacks. There we are again, Brett. That are coming back at blue blood schools. And that's maybe where I'd start. Carson Beck at Georgia, the favorites on Bet365 plus 300 to win the Natty. You have Texas with Quinn Ewers plus 800. So they're sandwiched in between Ohio State at plus 400. And then you have Alabama at plus 1,200, who does return Jalen Milroe.
Yes. Okay. My strategy with this is going to be boring. I'm sorry. But with all the unknowns that you just mentioned with the playoff, the length of the schedule, conference realignment, all that, I kind of feel like you just have to go chalk, especially on this bet. To win the Natty, Georgia. So, yeah, 3 teams immediately. They're all SEC teams that stick out. It's Georgia, Texas, Alabama for me.
Same.
Okay.
Those are the ones I trust a bit more.
Okay.
And it starts with the quarterbacks.
Exactly.
I also feel goodish about those coaches. I mean, I definitely trust Kirby. I've gained some trust for Sark. And while Alabama, I think it's really hard to move on from Saban, and I have real questions defensively, we have a really nice track record from this new coach on the offensive side of things.
Yeah, I mean, look at what Kalen DeBoer did with Michael Penix, just coming from Indiana to Washington. And I mean, look, man, Penix is still out there throwing darts in Falcons camp and stuff. Like, that's just who he is. I don't think that's who Jalen Milroe is. So I do want to pump the brakes a bit, and I just don't want to, fool myself and just go, he did it with Penix, he's going to do it with Milroe. You know what I mean?
But Milroe, I think, is like one of the most intriguing draft stories to follow going into this year.
Absolutely.
Because he's got some of that Jalen Hurts, JJ McCarthy, where it's like he is not an NFL quarterback right now. He's a very college dual threat guy. But I see the glimpses that make me think there could be a season. Kyler was kind of like this.
Sure.
It was like, oh yeah, there's this freak recruit out of Texas high school, and he's such a great runner. But then it was like, oh, there's more to this,
Right?
And there's more to what Milroe could give you, I think.
Yes, my faith in Alabama just lies in the rest of the roster. Frankly, the way they were able to retain a lot of these blue chip players, and they lose Bond, they lose Downs, so they lose some headliners for sure. But
we talked about
they're going to be beefy on both sides of the ball in the trenches.
The offensive line of Alabama, when we did our previews, it's kind of like, shit, what are we doing? Yeah. They've got DeBoer, they've got Milroe coming back, and they've got that offensive line. Like, I think even though they lost the 7th overall pick, right tackle, J.C. Latham, I think the O-line's going to be better than it was last year. And last year they started off rough. They were phenomenal by the end of the year.
Yep.
I think they'll pick up from there. And DeBoer at Washington had the best O-line in the country.
Yes. So that's where my faith is. Like, maybe Milroe doesn't even have to do too much this year. He can just turn around and hand the ball off, and they can just maul people up front all season. So that's where my faith lies with Alabama.
Yeah, I used to talk about I really trust I really buy into backfields I trust in the preseason.
Right.
So quarterback, running back combos. The teams you're mentioning, I really trust those O-line quarterback combos.
Yes.
It's much more about that.
Exactly.
And I kind of don't care too much about the wide receivers. It's just like, and Michigan O-line, I probably feel pretty good. Quarterback, I have real questions. Ohio State, that defense is going to be monstrous just on paper. The backfield promises to be really good. All around, there's a lot of talent. I do not know if I can trust Will Howard.
No, I mean, look, I'm taking Carson Beck over him. I'm taking Quinn Ewers over him. I'm taking Gabriel over him. I'm taking Milroe over him. LSU with Nussmeier, I'd probably take Will Howard. Mississippi, I'm taking Dart. FSU, I'm taking DJ, I think. Penn State, not a big Alar fan, probably taking Will Howard. Michigan, we know there. But Notre Dame, Riley Leonard, like, that's where my hesitations are with Ohio State, is that when you're in these matchups and you have to score 45 to win in round 2 of the playoffs or whatever, can you trust Will Howard to get that done? He's got the weapons. He's got the backfield. He's got the talent up front.
I know.
I just don't know if I directly trust him.
It almost seems crazy because Ryan Day, his track record with quarterbacks prior to last year with McCord, if we had the same conversation last year and I told you, yeah, but just think of Ryan Day and what he's been able to get out of his quarterbacks since he took over.
Yep.
Without Kyle McCord, we'd be like, shit, yeah, he usually kind of figures it out and turns that guy into a stud. But we've seen it with Kyle McCord where he did not.
Yeah.
And we've seen Will Howard. I think we both feel Will Howard, Kansas State last year, he wasn't the best quarterback Kansas State played.
They were finding excuses last year to get Avery Johnson on the field. Almost not even excuses. They were just like, no, we just got to get this guy on the field. And he, of course, ends up pushing Will Howard out once the portal opens after the season. But he's going to have one of the best receivers in the country. He's got the best backfield in the country, probably.
Oh, it's so silly.
They are stacked defensively as well. This team's going to be really, really good. Like, when they play like Maryland or something, it's going to be like 65 to 30. You know what I mean?
No, the defense is going to be scary. I have teensy-weensy O-line questions too.
Okay. That's fair enough. I mean,
like when we did those O-line previews, it's really just that big guard.
Exactly. Yeah. I think they have a tackle too, don't they? A right tackle?
I think they have a couple guys. I mean, because it's been last year, not many guys were in the draft. So, I mean,
right.
You've started 2 years at offensive tackle at Ohio State. You're going to go pretty high.
Right. So, I don't know, man. They're going to be good. I'm not trying to disrespect them or anything, but, they dug deep at times last year. You think of the Notre Dame game. I know you like to clown on him for it, which I love, but they're just going to be really good. And in these playoffs, it's just a whole new experiment, right? Like, you can take the talent all day in that if you feel comfortable, but for me, it comes down to quarterbacks. So
100%. Texas, on paper, I really like Texas. And you know what? I mentioned Sark, but more so than Sark, I have Ewers concerns.
Yes.
There's some his highs are as high as anyone. His lows, though, are. And I mean, Texas, Michigan, week 2,
Massive game.
Non-conference. That's huge. When then Texas has to take on this SEC schedule, where they'll get Mississippi State, they'll do the Red River rivalry. Then they have Georgia. I mean, by late October, they'll have played Michigan, Oklahoma, and Georgia. There's no shame with having 3 L's on the schedule because of that.
Well, and this is why everyone keeps talking about how the Big Ten and SEC are going to have 4 teams in. Because if Texas, if you go on the road to Michigan and lose, I think a lot of people will look at that one and say, okay, on the road, non-conference, it is what it is. Georgia is Georgia. You have to win that Oklahoma game, in my opinion. The rest of the schedule isn't as bad. I mean, you get Kentucky and at A&M at the end of the year. I'm still not in on A&M, by the way, so that's whatever. But they are going to be extremely talented. They're going to have one of the better quarterbacks in the country, and I think that push comes to shove, if this team is, ranked 14th heading into conference title weekend, and enough things go their way, they're going to get in the playoff with 3 or 4 losses.
For sure. And they are a dangerous double-digit seed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because that's where Ewers, right? I have questions on Ewers' ability to, win 11 games in the SEC. But in a single game matchup, the chances of him going off are just as scary as him shitting the bed, for lack of a better term. And that's where he could be scary.
Yes.
And then against those tippy top teams, they can, it's balls to the wall modern football. They can hit you on the outside and just go all out, and they can get after the quarterback.
Yep.
So it's just bring it,
This
on
is
3rd down, they're going to be well equipped.
One of the most, this is why, I don't know, natty odds this year, I don't think I'm going to bet a single one.
They're scary. But the odds are great.
They are, but Dre, here's the thing. When we get into the playoffs, and we do this for every other playoff and for every other sport, you look at the path, right? And what you just mentioned with Texas, if they draw a 12, 11, 10 seed or something with 3 losses, you know what I mean? You're going to look at the path that they've gone through, and they're probably going to be dogs against, all the other teams that they play. They're probably going to go up against another SEC team or 2. That's of course not factored into the odds right now. You could just be setting yourself up here. If they lose week 2, you got to burn the ticket almost at that point, because it's they could definitely make the playoff as a 3-loss team, as the 4th SEC team or whatever, and they could make some noise. They could go on the run. They have the talent, but they could also just have to play Oregon, Alabama, Ohio State, this just gauntlet in the playoffs where it's just plus 800 look good now in August, but when the bracket comes out in December, November, it's oh, wow. Well, tickets dead.
No, you're right. And outside of Georgia plus 300, Ohio State plus 400, the value's really nice. But with it being a 12-team playoff, what we have found through the years is sometimes you're going to get just as good odds at the start of the playoff.
True. Yep. Exactly.
Or going to really the sweet spot is conference championship week.
Well, and especially, and I'm just using Texas as an example this whole time. So say they lose 3 and 4 games, right? And they make the playoff as a 12, 11, 10 seed. They're going to be dogs probably in every playoff game. That's probably going to all amount up to plus 800 at some point. So if you want to ride a team like that, I think I just look at the matchups late in the season and kind of pick money lines based on that rather than picking natty odds right now. So to make the playoff odds, if you really want to bet a college football future, I'd bet conference title winners and to make the playoff odds, not natty this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And yeah, Alabama plus 1,200, Michigan plus 2,500.
Or just throw darts.
Of the 1,000 up, what FSU has done, they lost a lot of talent, or I would lean into that. I'm always a Lincoln Riley believer, but I don't think this is the year. Notre Dame. There's so much talent on that team, and Riley Leonard at quarterback. I do believe in Riley Leonard.
I do too. I think
former Duke transfer, really great size and athleticism, can really run it.
And he's just as good, if not better, than Sam Hartman, in my opinion. So this team is going to be better.
I think he's way better.
Yeah. Plus 2,500. I like that number. I mean,
I haven't looked at their schedule, but I'm guessing it's not. Like, sometimes they don't have the best schedule.
So let's see.
But it's a down year for Michigan State and USC and some of those teams.
So no Michigan, no Michigan State this year. They do open up against A&M on the road.
Okay,
they get Louisville at home. So week 1, A&M. Week 5, Louisville. Florida State in early November, and then USC to end the year. That's kind of it. They do play Army. They do play, teams like Georgia Tech, Purdue. But it's like, I mean, come on, Virginia, NIU, Miami, Ohio.
No, it's a really easy schedule outside of those two and FSU, USC.
I like that number for them. They of course don't have a conference number.
Underrated, right? They will have to be an at-large.
Yes.
Yeah. For sure.
I like Mizzou plus 4,000.
Really?
I like what they lost a lot on defense, but offensively they're returning quite a bit. One of the best receivers in the country, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, who isn't talked about enough, by the way, Brady Cook at Mizzou. They did lose their running back last year, but they have been...
LB3 comes back.
He's back.
They lose their starting corners. They lose Robinson down on the defensive line.
But this team has been recruiting their ass off. They've been hitting the portal. I think they're an SEC dark horse. And, I mean, if you win the SEC as Mizzou, like, you're going to be ranked top 3 or something. You're going to be heavy favorites going into the playoff.
Plus 4,000. That feels like a ticket that might be worth investing now and come SEC champion, December, it's like, they're a legit playoff team, and their odds have gone plus 4,000 to plus 800.
Right.
Okay.
Utah plus 6,600.
I definitely had the same reaction.
Okay.
I was like, I mean, Arizona plus 7,500.
Nah.
No, I know. I mean, it's especially the Natty. Like, these aren't to make the playoffs. These are to win the Natty.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of guys I like on that team that we have talked about in these previews. So
yeah.
But yeah, losing coach and everything. I mean, losing the coach is more detrimental than losing your quarterback. Probably.
The best advice I guess I would give right now, just pick a handful of teams on this. If anything, I'd pick darts. Or just go in on those 3 teams that I mentioned at the top, the Georgia, Texas, Bama combo. And then just kind of circle teams right now. Circle them.
I like it.
And then come back to us in November and let's see how the bracket kind of shapes out. And then we'll go from there. We're going to obviously talk all about it. So
no doubt. The book, like you, is intrigued by Oregon. They have the 4th shortest odds, tied for the 3rd with Texas.
I do like Oregon too. That's fine.
No, we talked about that in the Big Ten preview.
Yeah.
So like that's not a secret. That's more of a consensus opinion, which I like. All right, Jakester, thank you.
Guy.
Always a pleasure. Thank you to you all in the Toyota chat. Leave us a thumbs up on the way out, and thank you to Big Yaya on the sticks. We'll be back next week. Bye.
We all silly like the mayor.